Hello everyone. My name is Peter. Welcome to the true stories being shared here. Please sit back and listen to today's story. My mother-in-law deliberately gave my daughter chickenpox. I'm livid. She doesn't think it's a big deal. It's hard for me to even write this because thinking about it makes me so angry. Earlier this year, my husband and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since our daughter was born in September last year. Since they live a 12-hour drive away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend more time with Annie, 13 months. We arrived early as planned, and everything seemed fine. I had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law, Trish, about how I raised my child. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, buying baby food from the supermarket, and not raising Annie as an organic baby, but everything seemed okay. After a day or two of settling in, my husband and I decided to get some gifts from a mall about an hour away before the last-minute rush began. My father-in-law, 60M, tagged along as well. Trish said she was happy to watch Annie. We came back a few hours later, and Annie was asleep on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said a friend had stopped by and gave it as an early Christmas present. It looked pretty old, but I figured one of her hippie friends was just recycling it. The next 2 weeks were mostly fine, except for Trish trying to make meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband, and he told me to let it go. Annie mostly mashed the food Trish gave her with her hands or threw the bowl on the floor, as she's doing at this age. Trish said she'd take some time to get used to nutritious meals. I was sick of her interference, but it was only for a few weeks, so I let it go for the holidays. The day after Christmas, Annie was very fussy, irritable, and crying non-stop. I took her temperature and she had a fever, so I kept a close eye on her over the next few days, and thankfully, the fever began to subside. This morning, she started developing red spots and blisters on her hands and feet, which worried me. I was packing up to drive her to the doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash, and I was taking her to see a doctor. She had this weird, smug smile on her face and told me there was no need to worry. When I asked what she meant, she casually said, without even looking at Annie, that what she had was just chickenpox. I asked how she knew, and she nonchalantly admitted that one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago, so she had them rub the blanket all over the child's hands, feet, and face, and then brought it to her house. At this point, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked if the blanket was the gift Annie had been sleeping on. She said yes. I lost my damn mind. Honestly, I don't really remember what I said because I'd been up for 2 days straight checking on Annie. I just went off on Trish, asking her what the hell was wrong with her. My husband and father-in-law came in to try and calm things down, and Trish insisted that chickenpox was the best and most natural way for Annie to build her immunity. I had a vaccination appointment scheduled with my pediatrician, and she was due to be vaccinated against chickenpox when she turned 18 months old. We drove to see the doctor, who confirmed she had it. He said I would need to keep Annie's nails short and might have to put socks on her hands while she slept because little ones at her age can scratch until they bleed, which could leave scars. On the way back, my husband started making excuses for Trish, saying she was only doing what she thought was best. I couldn't believe he was defending her, and we argued all the way home until I told him not to speak to me anymore. Annie was itching like crazy, and I had to tape socks to her hands. Trish tried to talk to me when we got back, and I told her to get out of my sight. We were supposed to stay until Wednesday, but I've packed everything up so we can leave first thing in the morning. I'm so angry I can't even think straight. Whenever I hear Trish walking around the kitchen, my heart starts racing, and I feel like running out there and pulling her hair out. I never want to see her again or let my daughter near her. What can I say to make her and my husband realize the gravity of what she's done? I don't think I'll be able to speak coherently in front of them until Annie is better. TLDR, my mother-in-law deliberately gave my daughter chickenpox. I'm so angry I want to physically hurt her. I need advice on what to say to make her realize what she's done. Update. Thank you all for your comments, inbox messages, and advice after my original post. I read all the comments and messages, and they were really helpful, especially the home remedies for itching. Since my first post got locked and removed, I hope I can briefly summarize here. During the holidays, my mother-in-law Trish deliberately gave my daughter Annie chickenpox by wrapping her in an infected blanket while she was left alone for a few hours. Trish didn't tell anyone what she had done until Annie developed a fever and a terrible rash. Annie was scheduled to get vaccinated against chickenpox at 18 months, but Trish thought what she did was 100% normal, even though it caused Annie significant pain and discomfort, and she now has scars on her face and arms. Upon learning what she did, I was livid and argued with her, then packed our things to leave first thing the next morning. Shortly afterward, my husband Jack didn't think Trish did anything wrong. Update. I didn't think it was possible, but things got worse. The next morning, I woke up and started packing the car. When I opened it, I left the key in my pocket because I was going in and out. We usually use Jack's set and leave mine in my pocket. While I was packing up, he sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law at 6 p.m., chatting and drinking coffee like nothing had happened. Thankfully, Annie was still asleep, so I just gently buckled her in and closed the door when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we should go as soon as he was ready. He said, okay, and calmly took out his key ring and locked the car, trapping Annie inside. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he said we wouldn't leave until I apologized to Trish. I think I was so stunned that I was silent because he then took the opportunity to reiterate what he had said the day before. That Trish thought she was doing the best, that chickenpox doesn't kill you, and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than I needed to and making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. All the comments from my previous post kept spinning in my head, and I told him he needed to stop being a son and start being a father. He scowled and said he would always be Trish's son, and that was the issue, that no one could talk to his mother the way I did the day before, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre Twilight Zone where I accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of a grown man, so I just asked him to unlock the car so we could leave. He kept refusing and then went back inside, saying he'd meet me there when I was being more reasonable. I'm sure you can guess what happened next. I had left my purse on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. They weren't. I waited 30 seconds, then jumped in the car and drove off. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually, my parents and my sister Jess, who I'm very close to, called. I had briefly texted Jess about what happened the day before, but she was stunned to hear the full details. When I was on the open road, I asked her to call Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I cared. When she heard the story from my side and not Jack's apparently, I had lost my mind, scared Trish, snatched Annie and ran off. She calmed down. My mom, dad, and Jess offered to start driving and meet me halfway so I could switch with one of them and not have to drive 12 hours alone in one day. I was so grateful to see them that I nearly broke down in the truck stop parking lot when I said I loved them. They took turns driving while I rested. It was so reassuring to talk and know that Trish and Jack were the ones being unreasonable. When we got back, I stayed at my parents' house for the night, and they said I could stay as long as I wanted. The next few days were pretty stressful. I was up nearly all night to make sure Annie didn't scratch. She did anyway, and she seemed to cry until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face and a few more on her arms from scratching. I know looks don't matter, but I'm so angry that her skin is now marked for life because of some stupid bullshit. This whole thing is just something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls just for him to start ranting that he didn't recognize the person I'd become, so I hung up on him. He's supposed to be back at the beginning of the work year, which I'm not looking forward to, but I think we'll manage as long as Trish stays 12 hours away. Then, at about 11 p.m., I got a very short formal text from my father-in-law through Jack's phone, saying that Trish had shingles and was a mirror, that Jack was there taking care of her, and that he would be working remotely at their house after the new year started. Jack has been there the past few weeks catering to his mother's every whim. I'm sure she's putting on an Oscar-worthy performance of being 1 foot in the grave, and, according to Google, someday those pustules will gently scab over and peacefully pass into that sweet night. A few weeks ago, I was honestly so tired, overwhelmed, and in disbelief that I didn't know what to do. Now that I'm back with people who actually care about me, I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to see the weird relationship with his mother so early. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter says a lot. When he finally comes back, I think we'll have to have a serious talk about our future together. TLDR, my mother-in-law deliberately gave my 1-year-old daughter chickenpox. My husband sided with his mom. He tried to force me to apologize to her by locking our daughter in the car, but I drove away with a spare key. He's barely spoken to me for weeks since then. My mother-in-law got shingles, so he's been at her bedside taking care of her. I don't think any TLC will fix our relationship after seeing his true colors.